and welcome to this episode of Community Connections, airing right here on OROMIA11. I am your host, Anna Orr, and today I have the Director of Elections with the City of Minneapolis, Katie Smith, here joining us, and we are going to talk about access, we're going to talk about deadlines, accessibility, community, and some important dates you should pay attention to. This is going to be an episode you won't want to miss. Stay tuned. I'm so excited to have with me today the Director of Elections, Katie Smith from the City of Minneapolis. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Community Connections, Katie.
Oh, thank you for having me. I love to talk about elections and we're getting very excited.
Now, November 5th is right around the corner, and today's episode is just dedicated to share with our viewership about all things timeline as well as what they need to get together for requirements. And then we're going to talk about accessibility, a little bit about process, and then we're going to talk about community. I think all of those things tie into what we're trying to take care of, which is get community members out to vote.
Absolutely, I agree.
Now, can you talk to me about the deadline, a couple of deadlines coming up? When is the deadline to register to vote if you have not already?
The deadline to register to get on the roster is October 15th, so there's still plenty of time. And also that's just to register to make the list. So that's to be on the list when you go in to go vote. You can also just register when you vote. So while there is that deadline in place, you can register at any point. Don't let that inhibit you from going to the polls.
Okay, and then for those that are interested in filling out an absentee ballot, what is that timeline looking like for them to make sure that they get that taken care of?
That's more about just making sure you have enough time to get it mailed in, and if you want to get it mailed back into us as well, just leaving at least a week each way. So there's still ample time for that also. And there's no actual cutoff to when we quit accepting those requests. It's just making sure that you can get your ballot back to us by 8 o'clock on election night.
Now that makes a lot of sense. October 15th is coming around pretty quick. November 5th is approaching, but we do got a little bit of wiggle room for those that are trying to utilize their options in the modality in which they cast their vote. Now, I want to talk about early voting.
Yes.
What is the timeline for people that are casting their votes early? Because I know some people have watched the debate, some people have already decided when they heard when the primary took place who they're going to vote for. And they're saying, I'm ready to cast my vote right now. What is the timeline for that?
And we are so ready for you to come in and cast your ballot, and we're excited because early voting starts tomorrow morning, Friday, September 20th at 8 a.m. And we're open during our regular office hours, 8 to 4:30 here at the start of it. But as we get closer and closer to the election, we're going to open up additional locations. We're going to extend our hours. We're going to do some cool new pop-up early voting one-day events out in community. So people should check online. Our website is vote.minneapolismn.gov and make a plan for where and when you'd like to come and cast your ballot.
Now, what if you are someone who has recently moved and they want to make sure that all of their information is correct for them to cast their vote? Where is a good place for them to look that information up that they know is sound and they can trust?
Yes, the vote.minneapolismn.gov is kind of a one-stop shop. We've got links to those official pages on the Secretary of State's website, whether you want to register to vote, whether you want to look up and see what you need to bring with you, if you want to register when you're voting, if you want to look up times, places, locations, request your mail ballot, track your mail ballot. It's just kind of a one-stop trusted source just to go to our official webpage.
I think that's important and something people can count on. The Secretary of State is telling you this is information that is valid and that's been checked and will be updated around the clock for any changes or anything like that.
Correct.
Now, what is the timeline for election day? For people that are like me, I love to go and get in line, get my sticker, and go and cast my vote. What time are the polls going to be open?
Polls will open at 7 a.m. and they'll remain open until 8 p.m. or until the last voter in line gets to vote. So if you happen to be there at 8, don't worry, stay in line. You can still cast your ballot.
I think that's wonderful. And one of the few things that many people don't know, we are legally allowed to take a little bit of time off work and go and cast our vote. We don't have to miss because it may run concurrent with the time of our work hours, correct?
Yes, and actually there was a new law that passed and is in effect now, and you can also take time off work to early vote. So that's applicable starting tomorrow all the way through Election Day itself.
So I really hope that viewers take advantage of that opportunity. You heard it here first from Katie Smith, the Director of Elections with the City of Minneapolis, that you legally are allowed to take time off if you need to early vote, or if you know November 5th is going to be way too busy for you, you still can take care of your civic duty and go and cast your vote. I think that's wonderful that we realize that that is not only our duty, but it is of such high importance that our government is saying we're making it possible for everyone to take that opportunity. Now, we're talking just a little bit more about process. If you are interested in requesting an absentee ballot, for whatever reason you have a situation and you're like, I know I'm not going to be able to take care of that, can you talk about that process for people that are interested?
Yes, it's that one-stop website that I said, vote.minneapolismn.gov, and you'll just fill in the same information you would as if you were early voting. It's going to ask for your name, your address where you need your ballot mailed to, and like your either the last four of your social or your driver's license number. And then we'll get that application and we'll mail that out to you. And you'll get to make, it's the same exact ballot as you would see if you went to the polls. You get to make your selections, and they'll have an envelope that you put that same number on and you sign it. And then you send that back to us, and we send an envelope with postage. So it's free. You don't have to pay anything to be able to vote by mail. And then you just mail it back, and it'll get counted just like all of the early ballots, all of the election day ballots. It's all the same, and it all gets counted.
I think that's wonderful and such a free and easy process for you to take care of to make sure that we're able to do what we need to do. Now, can you talk to me just a little bit about the distinction between an absentee ballot and a mail-in ballot? I know sometimes people believe it's one and the same or the process is all the same, but can you kind of talk about that distinction for people that may be curious or feel like, oh no, I understand, and then may realize, hey, this is a little different than what I thought?
I think a lot of it is just the words that we give it to explain the way you're going to cast your ballot. We talk about election day or election day ballot. It just means you voted on election day. We talk about absentee sometimes when we talk about voting early, or when we talk about a mail ballot and voting by mail. It's the same ballot. It's just the process by how you're choosing to vote it and turn it in.
I appreciate that. I was looking at the website and I got a chance to see a sample ballot to know what to expect and to also do a little bit of homework. And I thought that was really impressive for someone that either is not familiar with the way the ballots look or what to expect. And there's a little bit of a difference from what takes place when we vote in the primary with the general election.
Yes, the sample ballots are amazing. It's a really helpful tool to plan ahead of time because it's going to be exactly the same as your ballot when you vote. And you can even bring it with you. You can print it out, make your marks on it, and bring it with you. So all you have to do is kind of translate those over onto your ballot. It's a good way to prepare, plan, be ready to cast your vote. It's a really long ballot this time, so it's helpful. Yeah,
it is. There are a lot of decisions that we get to make this go around. I have a few notes here. We're not only voting for the U.S. president, but we are voting for some state representative. We're voting for some Senate seats. There's the county commissioner for District 5. There's the school board available for a few, and some judicial seats. And then there are specific questions for our counties specific, correct?
If you're in Minneapolis, you're going to see there's a constitutional amendment question that you can vote on, and there's a school question that you would be able to vote on. And it really depends on where you live. That's true for across Minneapolis, but there's different things on ballots if you happen to live in a different jurisdiction. And that's another good reason to look at the sample ballot ahead of time to know what's going to be on your personal ballot.
I think you're right about that. And for those that may feel like it's not important to cast your ballot, there are a lot of pivotal roles that are up right now for election that we have to make sure, no matter if you're a Democrat, you're liberal, you're a Republican, that we need to lend ourselves to, and we need to know what's going on. and to make sure that not only, like you said, about the school board seats and the question going on with the school district, we need to make sure that we're aware of what's going on in our communities.
Yes.
I think that's very, very important. Now let's pivot a little bit and talk about requirements to vote. In the state of Minnesota, what do you need to make sure that you bring with you to go and cast your vote?
If you're already pre-registered, you don't need to bring anything with you. You'll just provide your name and your address and check in if you're voting on election day. If you're voting early, there'll be a form to fill out that you'll fill in your information on. If you do need to register, you might need to bring something with you. That web address is a good place to start with making sure you have exactly what you need, because there's 7 different ways that you can provide your proof of residency when you register. That includes a current ID or driver's license that's up to date and has your correct address and your photo. If you don't have that, you could have maybe like an ID that's out of date or an ID from before you moved, and you can pair that with like a certain bills. You can have someone that lives in your precinct that knows you and knows that you live where you live come with and vouch and say, I know this person and this is where they live, and they just sign the form with you. There's some others. If you're a student, you could be on the student housing list, and there's just a plethora of different ways that you can provide that residency requirement. So also a good thing to check ahead of time if you're registering.
I think that's really important on 2 different notes. One, with redistricting taking place, you may have a different polling place than you had last time. And please don't be like me. I went to the wrong place, had to check in, turn around and go somewhere else, which wasn't too far. But I was grateful that I was able to find out that information in a timely manner so I could still go and cast my vote. Also, a very good reason for people to go out and get to know their neighbors. If you need someone to vouch for you and you don't want to have to get out of line or have to call somebody, you want to be able to maybe recognize someone that's already in the venue and have them vouch for you and take care of that process. Please do not be like me and have to run around like a chicken with your head cut off. Now let's talk a little bit about accessibility. For those voting with a disability, what do they need to know before heading to the polls?
So there's a lot of different features of voting in Minnesota that make it more accessible, whether that's the fact that we have translated materials in our polls, that we're staffing our polling places based on language needs. We have assistive voting devices that you can actually zoom in on the ballot. It can read it auditorily to you. It has a lot of different features. Our polling places are all evaluated for accessibility to make sure people can move through them. Mm-hmm. And then we also offer curbside voting, where actually if you're not able to make it into the polling place, but you're in a vehicle or you're able to walk up outside or arrive in some way outside, we can actually bring a ballot out to you and then bring it in and insert it into the tabulation on your behalf.
I think that is wonderful. And if you are taking advantage of any of those accessibility opportunities, is there anything we need to do, as in call ahead or come in and grab someone to assist them? How do people set that type of assistance up?
No, and we really promote it a lot during early voting, like especially when we think about curbside voting. Mm-hmm. We'll have a tent outside, super easy to find. You just pull up and we'll come out to you.
That's wonderful. Now, you spoke about this a little earlier when we talked about the timeline for people to vote throughout the workday, that was one of the laws changed to help people cast their vote. What other changes do we have in the state of Minnesota that are either updating or brand new to people that may not know about them?
We had a lot of law changes in the 2023-2024 cycle that really expanded access and provided some new features to voting. One of those is the reenfranchisement of individuals who were formerly incarcerated. So it made it just a lot more clear and a lot more easy for people to understand, like if I'm not incarcerated, if I'm not in prison right now, I can vote. I can go and I can cast my ballot. So that was really expansionary. We also have a new permanent mail list. So if you are someone who prefers to vote by mail every time, you can add your name to that list and we'll just automatically send you a ballot every election. You don't have to keep reapplying. We had an extension of when your mail ballots need to be brought back in if you're going to drop them off. Just basically it made it more clear. It's just 8 o'clock on election night. When the polls close, everything just has to be done at 8 o'clock on election night. Those are the ones I can think of off of the top of my head, but if there's others, I'd happy to talk about them too.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful note to make about people that have maybe dealing with a criminal record or a past of any kind. They say, oh, I can't vote, it doesn't matter anyway. And that's not true. You are able to take advantage of your civic duty and cast your vote. All you need to do is check out that website and make sure they have all your proper information and figure out your polling place, and you too can cast your vote. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about community. Can you share with me some strategies that are in place to engage minority communities in voting?
I was fortunate to get to add 2 individuals to our team this year that are going to be permanent, that are doing our voter outreach and coordination efforts. And they work really closely with neighborhood and community relations, which is another department in the city that has community and cultural experts that are just out there in the field all day, every day. And they're really good connections with community members. But we've been out at a lot of different voter outreach events. Actually, one thing that's really cool is our new pop-up voting, where we can actually have one-day early voting events out and about in different neighborhoods. So we've been coordinating with different community venues to actually host those, and that's been really great because we've met people through networks that way, and then also met like all of the neighboring businesses and community partnerships that we've formed in that way to get the messaging out about those individualized events. And then I would say, just other than that, trying to connect, whether it's via media or whether it's via social media or a heavier online presence. We've just been doing a lot to make sure we're out in various communities, we're communicating, we're making sure our materials are translated so that they're readable by all of the different members of our big community, Minneapolis. So.
Are there any plans to increase polling locations or offer any mobile voting units in minority neighborhoods?
So the election day polling places are really set in geographically, like there's one in each precinct. For early voting, it's we're adding an additional north site and an additional south site for the last couple of weeks of the election, as well as our 11 different pop-up voting events that we're going to be hosting. As far as mobile voting, it's something that we've looked into because it's now available to us underneath of that new law change.
Okay.
There's a very long lead time to be able to get a mobile voting trailer that's accessible. So it's something that we hope to plan for and incorporate in the future. There wouldn't be time for this November election, but yeah.
And what was the predicate for the north location and the south location being added?
It gets really busy in the last couple of weeks, and we don't want anyone to have to wait in line and just at our one space. And then also just a little bit more geographic, if those might be closer to people instead of having to come to just our one site.
That was the answer that I was hoping for, that there was much more of an interest in turnout.
Yeah.
And so we needed to accommodate so that people are actually getting their chance to cast their vote if they wish.
We love the word turnout. We're always really proud that we're one of the most votingest cities, and we're always in one of the most votingest states, and we always aim for that record every election.
I think that's wonderful. I think that's absolutely wonderful, and hopefully that's encouraging some other areas to try and step it up a little bit and try and engage minority communities more and more so that we can see numbers continue to rise. How are you guys stabilizing engagement with voters, not only through the primary, but all the way through to the general election? There's usually a little bit of a gap. So how are you kind of keeping the voter audience engaged?
A lot of it's just this effort to have people on our staff that are full-time, that are year-round, because we want to even stay engaged. Like next spring when we don't have an election going on, we already have some plans for like attending the Community Connections Conference and like just keeping that a year-round connection where people know who to call, who they can communicate with on our team, and there's just a consistent presence.
I love hearing that about the Community Connections Conference. We are a partner at that conference, and it has been a wonderful time to not only see what the city is talking about, but also meet a lot of major community members and organizations that are doing boots on the ground work like yourself every day, trying to make our community a little bit better than we left it. Now, talk to me about how the city is addressing voter suppression concerns and restoring voting rights.
You know, it's one of our big legislative agenda items to provide expansion to the ballot box, to provide that ability for more people to get to participate. We were strong supporters of the restoration of rights for formerly incarcerated individuals. And then I would say we're just really working to make sure that any misinformation or anything out there is really being counteracted and providing good, true, accurate information so people know how that they can participate and cast their ballot, and directing people to official sources, like to whether it's our website or communicating directly with our office, because we want people to have good information and we want people to come out and cast their ballots.
I think that's very necessary. We hear often in alternate media as well as on social media how difficult it is for people to find out information about voting or hearing that their name has been taken off the list, things like that. And I know that it can be disheartening, but there is a reason, and it is very important to continue to push forward to cast your vote. Catherine, I want you to just take 1 minute and look directly in this camera and just make a plea to voters, encouraging them to come out and vote if you don't mind.
Of course. So for me, personally, when I think of like, why should you vote? I think it's, some people have a story, some people have a person, maybe they have a cause or a candidate, or there's always a driving force for why should I cast my ballot. And I think it's very personal and very individualized. So when I saw this question might be coming, I thought, well, what could I share that's my reason why I vote? And so my story of why I vote is when I was a child, I went with my mom to the polling place, and she explained to me how important it is to be able to cast your ballot, and that my grandmother, when she turned 18, didn't have the right to vote because she was a woman and women didn't have the right to cast a ballot at that time. And that's why it's really important that I think of all of the women that came before me that didn't have that ability, and that's why every time there's an election, even if the weather's not great or I'm busy, I find a way to make sure my vote is in there because I'm voting for my grandma. And I think everybody has some sort of story for why do I get out there? Why do I turn out? Why is my ballot one of the ones that's being counted? And I think the more we share our own individual stories with our family, our friends, our community, our neighbors, the more everyone thinks of that individualized to themselves. And it's important because we want I don't want just me to come out and vote. I want to make sure that all of those that are connected to me also get out and vote and cast their ballots. So that's what I encourage, is get out and vote, share with friends, family, neighbors, and community, and make sure everyone knows to get out and vote. And then also, if you want to participate, sign up to be an election judge and get involved.
Thank you so much, Katie. Now, for one last time, can you please provide us with the Secretary of State website so that people can tap into the very necessary information that was not only shared here today, but also is listed on that website?
Yeah, go to vote.minneapolismn.gov. That's the City of Minneapolis's voting website. And we've got links to each individual page for the Secretary of State site, and good information on there, and information on our polling locations as well.
Thank you for joining me today. It has been a pleasure talking to you and hearing about all the many efforts that you and the Elections and Voting Services team are doing at the City of Minneapolis to make sure that we have the access that we deserve and we get the opportunity to cast our vote on November 5th.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for this episode of Community Connections, airing right here on OROMIA11. As always, I am your host, Anna Orr. A very special thank you to Catherine Smith and her amazing team at the City of Minneapolis. And I hope that something that was shared today you have found inspirational, educational, and encourages you and the people connected to you to get out and vote.